I am the novelist, author, poet, Lamont Anthony Wright, aka Graffiti Blue. I'm getting ready to go to New York, but before I leave, just wanted to drop off a blog or two. By the time you guys are enjoying this, I may already have been on the stage. If you see this before Saturday and you live in Atlanta, holla at your boy. They say that the job of the youth is to rebel against the parents. Let's test that theory and apply it to hip hop. Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, dudes and dudettes, the sexy and the not so sexy, big children and little, I am the novelist, author, poet, Lamont Anthony Wright, aka Graffiti Blue.
Jokey on the track.
Got a short one for you today. Not gonna take too much of your time. 7 minutes is a guess. It is the job of the youth to rebel against the parents. This is pretty consistent. This is pretty common knowledge. So let's move forward. So applying that theory or logic to hip hop, we're gonna break down hip hop in just a few eras. I did a Google search and Google's got like 5 eras of hip hop, and the way they broke it up is kind of crazy. To simplify things, we're just going to use a few eras, okay? Old school, new school era, okay, the old school era, the new school era, the bling era, and the blog era, okay? There's a lot of sub categories going on in there. The crunk era's in there, drill music era's in there, boom bap and all. I mean, there's so many eras, but to keep it straight and to keep it short, it's the old school, new school, bling, and blog. All right, here we are. So to make the point I want to make, in every era, if the children are truly rebelling against the parents, then the music should sound different, the imagery should look different, and the lyricism should be definitely different, which is kind of a rebellion against the era that came before. So old school era, for example, you can throw a whole bunch of guys just in the old school bubble, right? The Message, Grandmaster Flash and those guys. For example, Africa Bambaataa. How many times have I mentioned his name on this podcast already? Okay. What did the music sound like? A lot of drum machines, no sampling yet. Okay, a lot of the music sounded like disco because we're coming out of the disco era in the late 70s going into the 80s, right? So, and the rappers of the day, you know what I mean, it had that sound because disco was dominant, you know, so a lot of very fast, high beats per minute music, guys was rapping and all of that stuff. And that was what it sounded like they was rapping over disco breaks early, all right? What did it look like? If that's what it sounded like, it looked like the disco era too. There were a lot of acts that were way done like over the top. You know what I mean? And you know, they wanted to look like, I guess, Parliament Funkadelic. You know, they had the crazy shiny pants and the bell-bottom flares out, and you know, you remember how the Village people would dress and all that. So they had the Village thing going on. You know, everybody had bandanas and a really disco look. So what were they rapping about? The rhyme patterns were amazingly simple. Rappers of the day would rhyme on the 4 count, right? You guys are familiar with the 4 count. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, rhyme. 1, 2, 3, rhyme. Basically how it went. All right. So what it looked like, what it sounded like, and what they rapped like was one thing. Let's go from the old school era into the new school era. Those now children of the old school generation rebelled pretty much against everything. You know what I mean? And, you know, let's throw the gangster era. There's so many subgenres, but let's stay focused. Let's stay focused. So in the new school era, what did it sound like? Well, it didn't sound like disco music anymore. You follow what I'm saying? There was, you know, this is the era of the boom bap. A lot of boom bap, just drum and hi-hat. And there was a slight evolution throughout the new school era where sampling comes in there and you get more 808 and the drum machines get more sophisticated and all of that stuff. And sonically, it's just different. What did it look like? Well, Run DMC revolutionized what it looked like. They were one of the first acts to say, well, the hell with wearing all of this disco stuff. We want to come with a pair of Lee jeans, some shell toe Adidas with no laces in them, a t-shirt, a leather blazer or bomber, and a freaking bowler hat. Let's go. We had never seen nothing like that before. So we was like, man, rappers can look like us and dress like us from around the way. This is amazing. What did they rap like? DJ Run from Run DMC does not get enough credit for really. He's in my top. He's one of my top 5 MCs to be honest with you. Just from impact, I don't think that he is technically lyrically better than maybe your top 5. And in all honesty, he's not the most lyrically prophetic in my own top 5. But just speaking from an impact standpoint, who in that time of Run's era did not know every line that Run said? Run was probably the most quoted MC of that era, period. Everybody knew sucker MCs from front to back. Shout out to Daryl McDaniels. Jesus Christ. So what they were rapping like was different. And Run started rapping just different than the guys that were before. Now, of course, guys like Coogee Rap, Big Daddy Kane, Rakim, of course, they would take the complex lyricism to a new level. You know, what would you say when the earth gets further and further away, planets as small as a ball of clay? That's Rakim. You know, crazy stuff. But moving forward, so we understand that when we are in control of the culture, things have a natural progression. Children rebelling against the parents, or one generation, the younger generation, rebelling against the older generation, is the natural way of things. I never get offended when the youngins want to do it different than I do it. That's a beautiful thing. That shows evolution. Okay, let's see if it stays consistent. Now, from the new school era to the bling era, let's take the bling era and examine it for a minute. All right, what does the bling era sound like? kind of sounds somewhat the same. Doesn't sounds somewhat different. Sounds a bit more sophisticated. Rappers like Lil Wayne and, and Drake and those guys are definitely rapping, expanding on the rap, not adding a whole revolutionized style of rapping in there, unless you want to throw mumble rap in there. But it's just, they're not reinventing the wheel. They're very good. They're very good, but they're not reinventing the wheel. What do they look like? Well, the bling era looks like the new school era on steroids. There was big gold chains in the old school era and in the new school era. Now the chains are just platinum and filled with diamonds. Okay, so it looks a little different, looks shinier, but is it a total rebellion against what came before? Not at all. I wonder why that is. What are the guys rapping like? A bit more sophisticated, definitely. Lil Wayne, especially mixtape Lil Wayne, was bending words crazy. So I'm not trying to take anything away from any prolific rapper of the bling era. The point I'm trying to make is that something is not following the natural order of things. And the reason why I suspect that it didn't follow the natural order is because now in the bling era, there are too many corporate interests in the culture. So now the culture does not move naturally. So the people who create the art are not in control of the art. So the people who are in control of the art and who are selling us this art are just selling us what they think we want to buy, or just trying to go with the safe bet and say, okay, this has always worked, so let's give them this because it always works. We don't want to take a risk on our investment. Fine, but it doesn't really seem rebellious. Now, there are certain things in the culture that are changing that seems to rebel, but the worship of material things and the gangster, mean, mugging everybody thing just remains consistent. So if things were natural and big money wasn't in it, where would the culture go? Because by now, there should have been a rebellion against gangster rap. There should have been an influx of nerds, of all of these kids. You know how kids are. Kids think it's super uncool to be anything like the parents. To the kids, the parents are squares. To the kids, the parents are the furthest thing from uncool you could even freaking be. So if the parents are gangster rappers, the children are gangster rappers? Or gangster rappers on steroids now. Now with the advent of drill music and RICO charges, people are literally telling you they're going to kill you on record and going to jail for telling you they're going to kill you on record. Something is wrong here. This is not a crisis. This is just a quick blog that I just wanted to bring these things to your attention. A lot of times, if you want to hide the truth, you put it right in people's face. Now, I'm probably not telling you guys anything you don't know, but that's just what it is. The real music, the real part of the culture that is untainted and unbothered by corporate interests is underground. Please support your independent artists. It doesn't have to be me. Subscribe to the channel. That would be great. But support somebody. It's less important that you support me and more important that you support any independent artist who you think is even remotely good. out there grinding for y'all, because when we just fund the corporate agenda, all they do is take your money, repackage bullshit, and sell it back to you.